As we all know, cooking is my bread and butter, and I've got baking in my veins. The Middleton bakers go back generations. Today we're making a humble bread roll and Marmite butter. Right, first thing we're going to do is get our flours together. Now you want a big bowl to mix this up in and a wooden spoon. So you don't get your hands so dirty at the start. Now with brown bread, you can use malt flour, you can use rye flour, you can use wholemeal flour. You want a little bit of gluten structure in there, so you want to go for a strong-ish brown bread flour. So you're going to get the malty, nutty, brown aroma from the brown bread flour, and you're going to get the strength of the gluten from the white bread flour. So we're going to go in with 400 grams of malt house bread flour, 100 white. When you're baking, it's all about percentages. Hydration percentage, flour ratio, salt, yeast, it's a percentage game. So you've got to go with the recipe when you're first starting out. Temperatures and percentages is the way to bake. So what we're going to do here, add 7 grams of salt, 7 grams of this little dry active yeast powders that you get in your supermarkets everywhere, and 320 grams of water. Now when you put the salt in, put it to one side of the bowl. Although the salt and the yeast is going to mix technically in the end, you don't want to put one on top of the other because the salt can kill the yeast. When it's dry active, it's not as likely to do that. It's good practice. So salt's in, yeast going in. Now people say when you work with bread, you've got to work with cold water if you're in a hot room, warm water if you're in a cold room. It's basically a game of temperatures. So we've got room temperature water because the room we're in today, as you can see, is pretty sunny, it's pretty warm. We're going to go 320 grams straight in. If your flour's been opened in the cupboard for ages, it's going to be drier. If it's really fresh, it's going to be moister. So the weight of the water is a guide. You're looking for the consistency, you're looking for the strength and the binding. If you put all the water in and it's still really crumbly and not coming together, splash a bit more in there. If you put half in and it's looking like it's going to be quite wet, put a little bit less. You need to be over the bowl and understanding what is going on inside of that thing. So I've just left a little bit out so I can check the consistency. The bread's not quite coming together, so I'm going to use that last little bit. And again, when you get to this last final stage, it's dribs and drabs. It's really small amount of hydration that will change the whole integrity of the bread. So because I haven't got my hands in there too early, now they're nice and clean. The dough has come together with the spoon, a little bit of flour in your hands, and then you get it out onto the bench. Once your dough is out on the board, you're going to take these tiny guppings out of the bowl, stick that to the dough, and then leave this to one side for proofing. So now with your right palm, you're going to push the dough away from you diagonally, pushing your palm against the bench, rolling and grinding that gluten out. Pull it back towards you, and then exactly the same with the left palm. So by the end of your kneading, you should end up with a clean V in front of you. So what you want to do is keep pushing that bread out, keep pushing that bread out. And if you haven't had a workout in a while, so get you a sweat on, you want to do this for about 5 minutes. We're going to get a little bit of flour on there. Try and make a rough ball out of it. We're doing that where with our little fingers, pushing the dough underneath very gently as we roll it around. We're just pushing it under, and it's a little flick and it's a little feeling, and you should get into the dough as you're doing it. You know, be a bit flamboyant with it, nobody's looking, a little flour over the top, and then we're going to put this in our proving bowl. So in the olden days we'd cover this with a damp cloth. Now the reason you do that is because the water would help seal the cloth and make it airtight. Nowadays we've got cling film, so we're just going to wrap it up in that. So we've left this for 20 minutes. We're just going to get it onto the bench and then give it a knock back. It's doubled in size. Now the gluten strands, they get stronger for 2 reasons. Working, energy applied to the dough, and another one is hydration over time. So if I was to make this dough now, mix it as I did, just bring it together and leave it in a ball for about 12 hours, the hydration over time will start to connect the gluten strands and strengthen them. You can do it that way, or you can do it faster by kneading it, which is what we're doing here. So, as you can see now, it's not sticking to the bench as much. That's because over the 20 minutes and the kneading that we've done, the flour is hydrating. It's starting to pull in the water, pull in the yeast, pull in the salt, and become one thing. quite rhythmic, isn't it, really? So we've got 5 minutes of this. My hands are getting very glutinous, very sticky. So we'll just put a little bit of flour on them and then carry on working it. So now we're going to collect up all the extra bits of flour and dough off the table and just finish the kneading through. Cool, so that's 5 minutes again. We're going to roll it into a ball, stick it back in the proving bowl, cover it in cling film. And you can see the difference from the last one. Now it's becoming a much smoother dough. There isn't the rocky bits of brown bread that are unhydrated sticking out the top. It's becoming a smooth, together piece of dough. Shape it up, back into the bowl. So this is at its second prove. Ta-da! So now this is our last knead, and I can feel this is coming together really nicely now, that my hand is not pushing through it so easily. The gluten is starting to create structure inside of the dough. It's starting to turn it from more than a sum of its parts. It's turning it into one entity, that beautiful brown bread dough. So you can see how that dough is nice and smooth. It's warm to the touch. It's became one thing. It is alive. The bread's proven and we're going to make a butter. We're going to make the Rolls Royce of butter, in my opinion. A yeast extract from a leading brand. Some people love it, some people hate it. We're going to take a good dollop into a massive bowl. Everything's room temperature. This will come together really, really easily. If it's not room temperature, just leave it a little bit longer because you're going to end up with lumps and bumps. So we've gone with salted butter for this, just because it's nice. A little bit of salt, a little bit of butter, a little bit of leading brand yeast extract. Job's a good one. So you whisk that all together, give it a good beat. Once that's all mixed together, it should almost look like toffee. Stick it straight into the piping bag. No waste, just taste. Right, I'm going to spin that round. And you tie her up. Sorted. Then leave that butter on the side at room temperature until you need it. You could probably do this about 6 hours in advance until it's going to start going a little bit funky. So we're going to just tip that out onto the board now. You don't want to try and take too much air out of it. Then portion it up. I reckon this could go handsomely into about 6. More flour on the proving tray slash board slash wooden paddle. So we go flat onto the board and we use the stickiness of the dough to help roll and shape into a nice ball. And we're like closing and cusping and using our little finger just to tuck the dough underneath as we roll up and create a little dinner roll, a little bun. First one, straight on, and then you continue. And now, goes into the bag, like this. We lift up, we capture air, and we tuck underneath. And the more you tuck it, the prouder the prover will get. Kind of like when you've got the bowl with the cling film on top, this is just going to allow it to prove and allow it to create that atmosphere without anything touching the top of the bread. Let's take a look inside this bag. Scalpel. The smell coming off of this is mental. We want to take a little blade now and just cut across the top of the dough. Not too deep, just to give it a little helping hand to rise up. A little bit of flour over the top. You can do this before or after the cut. It's going straight in the oven. So I'm just going to place these onto the hot tray now. Normally you do this with a pizza paddle. Try not to burn yourself. 220 degrees. And we're just placing them in there. And putting it onto that hot tray. That will help the heat rise up through the dough and give it a brilliant lift. Hot water in the hot pan. That's going to create the atmosphere. I've been in for about 20 minutes. We're just going to get them out and check them. So how you want to check these is you lift them up and just tap the bottom, and if it sounds hollow, they're good to go. We're going to take them off and just put them on a cooling rack for about 25 minutes to come down to room temperature. And how you can tell great bread, it's not the look, it's not the feel, it's the sound. A symphony of crackers. We've got beautiful, freshly made Middleton brown bread, Marmite butter. It's got a beautiful rise on it, smells delicious, it's perfect. He's perfect. He's not bad. Middleton brown bread brought into the 21st century.